Hi, and welcome to the OT is In, the podcast where we merge the worlds of education and occupational therapy to empower families like yours. I'm Sarah Collins, your host, an occupational therapist and a homeschooling parent. I've experienced occupational therapy by supporting families for over 15 years, but also through seeking out support of my own children, so I'm right here in the trenches with you. Though there is not one way to educate your child, there is a lot to consider when individualizing an education. And the goal of this podcast is to explain some of the why behind what an occupational therapist is thinking so you can apply it to your own family. Especially with my three favorite topics: executive functioning, handwriting, and sensory processing. Each episode will be packed with practical tips, expert interviews, and real-life stories aimed at helping you to create a supportive learning environment for your child. So, grab your headphones and get ready to dive in of the collision of education and occupational therapy. I'm Sarah Collins from Homeschool OT, and I'm thrilled to have you with me on this journey of discovery. If you've ever found yourself wondering why your child forgets instructions moments after hearing them, or seems to struggle with multi-step tasks, even when the concept itself isn't new, this episode is for you. We're talking all about working memory today, what it actually is, and how it affects both everyday routines and academic learning at home. As homeschool parents, we have the unique opportunity to notice these patterns up close, the moments when simple directions get lost, math problems fall apart, or reading comprehension just isn't sticking. But what if these aren't just habits or temperament, but signals about how your child's brain is managing information? In this conversation, we'll reframe those frustrating moments as signs of cognitive skills at work. Skills that are flexible, buildable, and often overlooked in typical supports. You'll leave with practical ways to recognize working memory struggles, strategies for support, and insight into why compensating isn't always the same as growing capacity. This matters because when we understand working memory as a skill rather than as a fixed trait, we change the way we support and challenge our kids. And that's especially powerful in a homeschool environment where each child's learning journey can truly be individualized. Now, before we get started, I want to personally thank CTC Math for sponsoring this week's podcast. You'll hear more about them later, but it is important to note that without CTC, the OT is In would not be possible. Now, let's dive into this conversation. Hey, and welcome back to the OT is In. My name is Sarah Collins, and today I have with me Sandra Zamalis. Now, we have met several different times, actually, and you heard us probably over on the Brainy Moms podcast. We've also met at lots of different homeschool conferences, and so it is my honor to bring her here to you. She's from LearningRx, which is one of the fantastic organizations that we partner with here at Homeschool OT, and we're going to dive in today to a subject near and dear to my heart, and I'll get into this a little bit later, but of working memory. So before we get started, can you just tell us a little bit more about yourself and your journey on this path that what got you here?
Sure, absolutely. I was a homeschool mom. I homeschooled my kids from kindergarten all the way up to when my son was in 10th grade, and my daughter was in 8th grade, and then they went to public school and finished out their homeschool journey. So at that point, I had a little crisis of
What am I going
self.
to
What am I going to do with
do?
myself? And so I, at the time, decided to pursue education because I homeschooled my kids. I always loved
Mhm.
teaching, and I thought that would be the next step for me, and quickly realized that was not my path. I very serendipitously found LearningRx. Someone in one of my master's classes was talking about working for a LearningRx in a city over the mountain from me, and I
Mhm.
was so intrigued by everything I was hearing that I just had to go find them for myself. And lo and behold, there was actually one in my town, which is, again, a Holy Spirit thing because we're a little tiny town. So the odds of
Where do
this,
you live?
We live in Stanton, Virginia, but it's a teeny tiny little
I
town.
lived in Stanton, Virginia for a long time.
Yeah, so teeny tiny.
Yeah, teeny.
And LearningRx is a franchise system, so it tends to be in bigger cities. So how cool was it that it was in my little town? And I literally went over to them after a yoga class. I was not dressed professionally at all. I walked in with my hair in a ponytail, all sweaty, because I was just curious. I wanted to know more about them. And they were hiring.
Yeah,
And
look at that.
I literally on a Monday went to a hiring event, got hired as a trainer, and fell in love with everything that we do at our center. And then in 2018, the owner decided to retire, and I just took on the torch and kept on running.
Amazing, amazing. Now, Learning RX, you guys work through a lot more than just working memory, but clearly we just want to narrow down a little bit today because there is so much. If we're talking about cognitive training, we could go on and
Oh,
on.
yeah, we could get in the weeds for sure.
So can just to start us off, can you define working memory in a way that would make sense to the everyday, in our everyday life?
Sure. Working memory, the way we look at it, our program is based off the Cattell-Horn-Carroll theory of intelligence. So the way we look at working memory is that working memory is one of three really important automatic processing skills that your brain needs to function and reach those higher level critical thinking skills. But the easiest way to think about working memory is to think about it as a bucket with holes in it. But
Okay.
everyone has different size buckets. Some people have little beach buckets that
A little pale.
yeah, a little pail, and they can only handle a certain amount, right? And some people have the big Lowe's or Home Depot size 5-gallon buckets
Mhm.
of working memory capacity. And that's what I want, I think, your listeners to think of it. Think of it as capacity because the
Okay.
working memory is how your brain works through information. It needs to hold it in the bucket
Mhm.
long enough to be able to work with it and then compute or then store it, right? A lot of times, even if you think about working memory, you understand the process of the brain collecting data. Your brain can't collect everything you've ever heard or seen.
Right.
It needs to dump things. So when it's important, we need to keep it in the bucket for as long as we can so that we can work with it. But if it's unimportant, then we need to just let it go. And so it's really important to track working memory for kids
Mhm.
because that particular skill is a common weak skill in many different learning disabilities and learning challenges.
So when we're saying track it within kids, what would we see in their everyday life where we would say maybe this is a working memory struggle?
Gotcha. Okay. A great example of things I like to think about phrases you might say as a
Mhm.
parent and start there because honestly,
Perfect.
that's
Yeah.
probably the biggest red flag. So if you've ever said to yourself, oh my gosh, she's just so forgetful, or
Mhm.
I just told you that.
Yes, yes.
Remember, we just covered it. She's so disorganized, or I know he knows this, he just won't do it. How about this is one of my favorites. He starts things, but he never finishes them. Like
But
those
how would that
phrases,
not be
yeah,
like persistence? Why would that be working memory? Or how do we tell the difference? Or do we? Do they just all
yeah.
go together?
I think they all go together
Okay.
because persistence would require you to have the capacity to hold that information and then
Mhm.
just be able to diligently work after it, right? But if you have, again, think about that pail at the
Mhm.
beach. If you have a small size working memory capacity and the memory dumps, then of course you're going to be doing a task, get sidetracked, go do another task, get sidetracked
Mhm.
again, go do another task. Or think about it in a math problem that shows up in math a
Yeah.
lot, especially as we get into those multi-step math problems. So division requires a lot of working memory. We have to have a lot of automaticity and some underlying skills in order to be able to remember the steps,
Mhm.
apply the different mathematical principles and keep it all together until we get to
Yeah.
the end. Same
Mhm.
with a multi-stepped word problem.
Mhm.
That notoriously will bring kids to tears because the working memory load just reaches capacity and we aren't able to cipher through that information. Another example would be when you're reading a story and then you can't remember what you just read.
Yeah. It's actually really interesting. Even now, when I'm reading to my son, like to my youngest son, I have to focus, tell myself, you will pay attention to this because my mind starts wandering. And then I'm at the end of the story and I'm like, what did I even just read? And how can I ask him this questions about it? And my youngest son has a fantastic working memory and he can narrate back anything, which is absolutely amazing. So a lot of times I'll be like, hey, can you tell me what we just read? And he's like, I have, again, no idea what has just happened. Which actually brings me, I guess I should give a little background on this. My mother, she was a gifted and talented teacher, which I'm not sure if they still use that term anymore, but when I was in middle school, elementary school, I think all the way through high school, that's what her job was. And she had told me at one point that she needed to practice giving this standardized test, right? So we're on vacation. We are going between Arizona. We're driving from, I don't know, the Grand Canyon to somewhere else. And I remember her giving me this test. I remember there were some auditory processing pieces because there was like, what word is that? So there were some pieces of that. And then I remember that I had to look at some aliens or something and find a picture. And then I was supposed to tell her all these things about this picture and whatever. And that night, when we were in the hotel room, clearly this was tied to emotion because this is the way I can still remember it. When we were in that hotel room, she had told me that now I was in high school, that my working memory was that of a kindergartner. And so now I don't know. She never did anything about that, or nor did I, but I do know that it still shows up here for me in a lot of different parts of my life. Now, I will say, I think because of this, I am fantastic at flexible thinking, right? I can problem solve through anything, but the actual working memory piece is really still a struggle for me. So I have so much compassion for kiddos that really struggle, especially in things like with reading comprehension, even with sounding out words from starting at the beginning of the word and trying to get to the end and remembering all the sounds that they've said.
Especially when the words get really long and you're
Yeah.
trying to work through all of those different pieces. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And remembering all the steps in math, like all of this is, yes, that was me. That was me. That was me.
Yeah. And I always tell parents that from a parent perspective, yes, it can be frustrating when your child forgets things, but it's more frustrating for them. It's more emotional for them. It's no fun to forget. As you just highlighted for us, you feel that and you'll mask and you'll do things to make sure that you don't get called out for being forgetful. And so it's important to recognize. And I want to put a shout out for your mom because education and principles behind cognitive skills have changed a lot in the last 30, 40 years. And for a very long time, neuroplasticity research had not made it into educational philosophy. And I would definitely say it probably still isn't there because we think of the brain as being fixed, but it's not. We actually can build skill. And so while to think of it now, knowing what you know, to be like, oh, we didn't do anything about
it. I know, like, come on, Mom.
But they wouldn't have back then. They wouldn't have addressed it. They would have just tracked it perhaps or tried to figure out ways to compensate or accommodate for that skill weakness. And that's what we still do today.
Yeah. And now that I'm thinking about it, as much as I'm like, I don't think she ever did anything, I am a fantastic note taker. And I do remember her sitting there and telling me literally teaching me how to outline a chapter in a specific format. So that probably to accommodate for this skill. So maybe I'm not giving her enough credit. Sorry, Mom.
Well, and she clearly was strategic about the tools that you were going to need to be successful. So kudos to her because it's really challenging to manage weak working memory, both for the student and for adults that are working with them.
When handwriting feels hard, it's often because the output demand is bigger than a child's readiness. And the same thing can happen in math. That's one reason that I love CTC Math for homeschool families. The instruction is clear, step-by-step, and mastery-based, so kids can focus on understanding the math instead of fighting the format. Parents don't have to worry about gaps, and kids aren't rushed past skills before they're ready. From an occupational therapy perspective, that flexibility matters. You can adjust how your child writes, how they show their work, or how much they do in one sitting without losing the integrity of the lesson. So if you're looking for a math program that supports learning and your child's nervous system, you can learn more about CTC Math through the link in the show notes. Guys, there is a free trial and a special discount code, so be sure that you make the show notes your first stop. Now, back to the show. Welcome back, and thank you so much for listening to me talk about this and actually reminding me of some beautiful times with my mom. I think that I need to have a conversation with her and be like, Mom, I was blaming you for some things, but actually you were doing really good work. So thank you for that. And she will thank you too. Now let's dive in, because you have talked a little bit about what we knew before versus what we do now, how we think about the brain and neuroplasticity. So can you dive a little bit deeper into that?
Sure. So, what we did before is we would accommodate and use compensation strategies for these weak skills. And I would say that is predominantly what we do today. Education. Very few really think about the training aspect of it. And that's where I'll talk about it a little bit. But I want to be clear, because in homeschool, the benefit of homeschooling your kids is, one, you can always go at your child's pace. You can always build skills incrementally and work through some of these academic challenges. You can always accommodate and use these compensation strategies. But when we're talking about weak cognitive skill, what I'm talking about is, like what you said, a cognitive skill that's coming in below average. So typically, if you're looking at a percentile score, anything below the 30th percentile would be considered below average. That child is going to function less efficiently in their learning tasks than someone who is in the 50th or 60th percentile. They have to work a lot harder. So when we use accommodations and compensation strategies, one of the things I really try to help parents and educators, I talk to teachers all the time, understand is that compensation strategies and techniques and accommodations are workarounds. They are term solutions. They help a child cope, and that's important. They need to be able to cope in the moment. But we also need to have a long-term strategy in order to build that skill and help it become stronger so that a student can function more efficiently. I like to think about it as glasses. People use this all the time for accommodations. Glasses we need for poor vision, but glasses don't strengthen your eyes. And in this particular case, eyes, you can't strengthen your eye to see better, but you can strengthen your brain to work through those different cognitive skills more efficiently. You absolutely can. And at LearningRx, we have over 20 peer-reviewed research studies that look at these cognitive skill gains. We also have a randomized control trial. We have a study on dyslexia. We have a study on ADHD. So you can do a deep dive into the actual research if you want to. But what our research shows us is that in order to get a skill to move, especially if we want to get it to move in a statistically significant way, we've got to train that skill in a certain way. It needs some special ingredients. Number one, we have to practice that actual skill that we're aiming for. A lot of times we'll use for lack of a better term, a shotgun approach.
Okay.
And we'll just try to hit it in lots of different ways, but we're not precise enough at that skill that we're aiming for to help that particular muscle, or in this case, skill, strengthen. A really good strategy when you're trying to build skills to make sure you're practicing that particular skill. The other piece that's important is to build cognitive skill, you need one-to-one training. It's not an app, although there is some research on some apps out there that have made some gain. But that one-to-one piece, that eye-to-eye piece, is really important for another reason that I'll come back to. But one-to-one leads to really tailored training in that particular skill, and that's really important. The other ingredient you need is intensity. We like to call it productive struggle. In order to build a skill, we've got to get you to a place of a little bit of discomfort so that you feel that skill honing in. If it's too easy, we've missed the mark. If it's too hard, we're in meltdown land. So it's got to be in that sweet spot.
In OT speak, we call that the just right challenge. So
exactly.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
I mentioned that we want to be like targeted like a laser on that particular skill area, but we also want to load a skill. And the reason why we want to load a skill is because we all these skills that we work on, we have to drive to automaticity. We have to have as much skill be automatic as we can so that the brain can have bigger capacity. So we want to expand that bucket, right?
Right,
So that it
okay.
can handle more and more. So we have to load it. My favorite example is thinking about basketball. When we first learn how to play basketball, you're dribbling the ball. Then you're dribbling and walking. Then you're
Mhm.
dribbling and running. Then you might be dribbling and shooting. Then you might dribble against another player. And you're constantly loading that skill. At some point, you're not thinking about any of the sub skills underneath that. You are
Right,
just
right.
playing the game. And that is how skills work as well. You have to be working at them in a way that loads them so that they just become automatic and in the background. Skills also have to be sequenced in a certain way. We need to start in a space that's easy and build complexity along the way.
Mm.
That builds confidence. And then because of that one-to-one component, the most important part of that is immediate feedback. When you're training a skill, the brain needs to know immediately that it made a mistake so it can correct and move forward. My favorite example on that one is I remember playing a piano piece one time all week long, and I went to my lesson and found out I did it wrong.
Oops.
And
Right.
the amount of
Yeah,
repractice I had to
unwork.
do,
Yeah.
rewire what I had done incorrectly the first time, was incredibly
Hmm.
frustrating to my brain. It would have been so much nicer to be
Yeah.
there with my instructor and to be able to play. And when that error happened, to get that immediate feedback so that I could get that correction and move forward and not wire it incorrectly. But as educators, both at
Mhm.
home and with families I work with whose kids are in public and private school, that's part of the issue sometimes, is that we allow a student to go too long before
Yeah.
we can give them that feedback. It does them no service to give a test back 3 days later because
Right.
you've missed the opportunity to
Yeah,
make
you've
the
already moved
correction.
on to the other next thing in history or whatever, moved on and you
Exactly.
don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'd love to be able to demo this for you if you would be game. Do you want to
I
play a
mean,
game with me? Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I'm going to give you instructions for this game, and I'm going to be very careful not to over explain, and I want your brain to
okay.
sort of catch on to what I want as we go. Okay? So I'm
Okay.
going to
I'm
give you
feeling a
two
lot of
numbers.
stress.
I know already. No, you're going to do great. All right, I'm going to give you two numbers. And if you're listening, listeners, I want you to play along too and see if you can kind of catch on. All right, I'm going to give you two numbers and I want you to give me the sum. Are you ready?
Yep.
1, 3.
4,
Good job. All right, what was the last number I said?
3,
Okay, I'm going to give you a new number and I want you to add it to the last number I said. 2.
5,
Good. 4.
9,
Whoops. So the last number I said was 2. My new number is 4. So what would be the sum?
6,
Good job. 4.
10.
Whoops. So my last number was 4. My new number is
So I'm not
4.
adding it to my sum. I'm adding it to
No.
your number.
Ding
Okay.
ding, you
All
got
right.
it. All
I'm
right.
in. I'm
All
in.
right, we're gonna wipe the slate clean. Let's do it again. Here we go. Ready? You got it. 3, 1,
4,
2,
3.
3.
I forgot what you said. 3, 1, 4, 4, 7.
Whoops, 5. See if you can keep it going.
But I don't remember what my number was.
What was the
So
last number I said?
I don't know.
Right, we'll
See,
start
isn't
again.
this really interesting?
I know, but we're gonna train this. So hold on. Here you go. You
Oh, we
ready?
are
I
we?
know we are.
Okay.
2, 2.
4,
Good job. 3,
5,
5,
8,
3,
5, 3, 8.
4.
Right? You said 3, 4, 3, 7.
Yes. All right, you got 5 in a row. Very nicely done. I'm going to give you a high five.
There it is.
Now, with a student, we
Mhm.
would start off with that low complexity piece, and then
Mhm.
we would load that and tailor that and build that more and more. We have hundreds of tools that we use at the
Yeah.
center to train that skill, but this is a great way to kind of demonstrate how you target that skill specifically. Because you have
Mhm.
to engage. You physically, hopefully, felt your brain have to be like, okay,
Yeah.
what did she
Yeah.
say? I got to
Mhm.
hold that information. And I really love games like this because of the auditory memory component to it. So we haven't talked about this, but at LearningRx, we look at the visual working memory and also the auditory working memory. And a lot of us are really good at visual working memory. So that's why things like visual systems work really well when we're
Yeah.
trying to keep track, but auditory memory is wah wah, not
Yeah.
so strong.
I've
And
told you three things to do. What did I tell you? Yeah, I got
yeah,
nothing.
yeah.
Hmm.
So building that auditory memory capacity, finding activities that really target that is just really important
Yeah.
and valuable for students to build that. And we actually build this task to such complexity that they're doing things on beat and
Mhm.
also alternating sums, differences, products. We really, I think of it like a plate juggler.
Yeah. So that's adding in a lot of that intensity that you were talking about,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
especially even with the metronome, because there's
yep,
a lot of research out on metronome, and I love to hear
yep.
you guys are using that specifically, right?
Yeah, so we use metronome specifically for the intensity piece because to do it on beat means you can't pause. If I had
Yeah.
asked you to do that on beat, how would you have felt?
Even more, I would have felt really stressed, honestly, because I'd be like, I'm missing it, I'm missing it, I'm missing it. And I would have thought about the beat more than I would have thought about the number.
But eventually, when you practice
Yeah.
that task over time, that anxiety would go down, right? And
Yeah.
you don't throw something like that at a student until you've built up enough loading, kind of like the dribbling
Yes.
analogy I
Hmm.
gave you. You built up enough loading capacity to be able to handle that
Yeah.
particular piece of
Right.
the equation. Anyway, the metronome is a processing speed pusher. So
Hmm.
for kids, again, working memory, I mentioned before, is a kind of a common weak area that we see in kids with ADHD, dyslexia, autism, and other learning challenges. But we also tend to see weak processing speed. And
Yeah.
processing speed is part of that trifecta of automatic processing skills that we need in order to think efficiently. And if we can do things on a beat, it pushes that processing speed so that we can process quicker. Because an important thing to think about in that automatic processing component is that if our working memory is strong, like that 5 gallon bucket we talked about,
Hmm.
but our processing speed is too slow, we're still going to dump, even though we had
Yeah.
the capacity. So we need to build speed and memory together so that we can function efficiently and be able to use the information that we have in that working memory with ease.
It's fascinating. Now, I know that there are some parents because, and my son has actually asked this question to me in the past, so I want to address it quickly. There's two things. One, you and I know each other, right? So for you to ask those questions to me or whatever, I felt safe. Safe. I still felt a little anxiety, but I felt safe enough that if I was going to mess up, whatever, even though all these people are listening, it's okay. So I love how you mentioned that you wouldn't do that type of thing until after you have built a rapport. So that is a huge piece. So when parents are looking for a provider or for somebody to work with their kiddos, what are some questions that you think that they could ask to hone in on, is this person really going to help and ensure that they are safe when we're going in?
Sure. So at LearningRx, it's really our model. We talked about that one-to-one piece.
Mhm.
All of our trainers are trained to build relationship first
Yeah.
because in order to get kids to do hard things, they have to trust
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
And where you felt it, it's
Mhm.
funny when even when I hire trainers, we talk about cognitive skill, and it is our most vulnerable
Yeah.
thing that we have someone truly understand how our brain thinks and what we do well and what we struggle in is a really humbling place to be.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and the same thing goes for our kids. I will say that kids at our center, when they come in, they feel seen because we make it fun. We make it
Mhm.
game. Again, we build that relationship and rapport right from the gate so that when we do ask them to work and do things, they know that they're in a safe space. In terms of other programs out there, always check for that. That one to
Mhm.
one piece is really important. If you're trying to build cognitive skill, a small group setting is not going to work. And the reason for that is because kids can hide and you can't
Yeah.
give them the immediate feedback. You can't see the moment their attention drifts and get them back on task as
Mhm.
easily. You can't adjust in real time if they're struggling, right, with
Mhm.
a beat, or in our case, with a beat or with some other aspect of the task. That one to one ability really helps you to adjust and tailor and individualize what that student needs right in that moment in time. Anything in a small group setting is not going to be able to do that because kids just get really good at dodging and weaving
Yeah.
and hiding the things that they're not good at. Plus, your child's not going to feel safe in a small group in an area that they're not strong in,
Strong it. Yeah.
especially if they really need to work on that particular skill. Lots of high fives is really important. You want to make sure that are working with a group that definitely has a lot of encouragement. But if you're trying to build skill, I would check in on their research. That would be my
Okay.
number one question I would ask. Show me your peer-reviewed research, and not just research on neuroplasticity. I, there are lots of programs out there that are based. I would want to see the research on that particular
Method.
program's method, because that's going to give you more feedback as to whether this is going to work for your child. A lot of times you'll hear testimonials, and all those things are great and they build trust. But to truly know if this is the right fit for your child, the research is what's going to guide that.
Okay. Beautiful. Now, the second piece comes along with, and again, my son and I have talked about this in the past, and I'm going to say how I answer it. But what about the kiddo who's, Mom, are you trying to fix me? Am I broken? What is happening here? Now, for my son, one of the things that we really talked about is that I never want to hold him back. In fact, I want to help to support him to do all the things that he needs and wants to do. Now, for him specifically, we had to target visual skills, like with his eye muscles and things at the beginning. He had convergence disorder, and I can link to the podcast where we've talked about this in the past and where he's talked about it with me here. But that affected his reading, and it also affected his ability to play hockey, which he wanted to do. So, am I trying to quote unquote fix you, or am I? No, what I'm trying to do is support these skills so that you can do what you need and want to do. Now, that's how I've answered it. But what are some of the answers that you can help parents with, or other ways to think about that?
Sure. I'm sorry to keep coming back to sports, but I feel
I'm
like
with
it's
you.
the greatest analogy.
Yeah.
For some reason, and again, it's like that the idea that our brain is fixed. There's this notion in the learning world that your brain is perfect as it is and
Hmm.
it never needs help. There's a lot when you're learning, there's a lot of things in learning that are hard. And
Yeah.
for example, if algebra was hard, I would want a tutor to
Yeah.
help me in algebra so that algebra was easier. For me, it was organic chemistry, lots of tears, organic chemistry, because my brain just would not wrap around it. And for whatever reason, when we struggle in something, sometimes we'll think, oh, I'm just not good at that thing. But here's the thing that I want your listeners to hear is the brain is designed and wired to learn. So,
Mm-hmm.
when learning is a challenge for a student, that doesn't mean that anything's broken. It just means they need additional practice in certain kinds of tasks and thinking capacities in order for learning to be easier for them, because we all are born with some default settings, right? So, again, to go back to a sports analogy, if my child had a dream of being a professional basketball player, I would give them the tools and support they
Right.
need in order to get them to that dream, that goal. I wouldn't just operate on a hope and a prayer that they would get there by
Yeah.
playing basketball in the backyard. Some people are super talented and that might happen, but that's very far and few between. There's a lot of work, effort, skill building that goes into every sport. And even in sports, especially now, there's a lot of cognitive training that goes
Yeah.
into sports. And because in order to be elite, you have to be able to think quickly, remember plays. You've got to be able to visualize the field. You've got
Hmm.
to think quickly on your feet. So fast processing speed. There's a lot of stuff that cognitively that happens for sports, and for those elite level players, they're definitely trying to build those skills. And the same applies to learning. There are things that we can be doing to help our kids just be efficient at learning so that they can do whatever it is that they want to do.
To
That's the
do.
goal.
Yes.
The
Hmm.
goal is to have them have as many doors open to them as possible by giving them the skills they need to be able to walk through the door that they are the most passionate about.
I love this. Thank you so much. This has been really fun and enlightening, and I feel like big changes in my own home and relationships with people. So that's great. And also learning more about how we can help and address our own brains at any point in time. Now, Learning RX isn't just for kids, right? You do
No.
work with adults all the way through, right?
Yeah, we work
Mm,
with kids and adults, and some of our published studies are specific to things like TBI. We
yeah.
have some mild cognitive impairment studies. We have adults that are transitioning between jobs that want to get some help with better skills. Because I hate to end on this note, but the sad fact is that at around our 30s, our skills start to dive down,
Right.
and that's why a lot of times in our midlife, we'll start to feel like our strategies and things we were doing aren't working anymore. And it
Mhm.
starts to cause some overwhelm and frustration. But it's because we're losing things like processing speed, we're losing things like working memory. So we have to keep them actively engaged throughout our whole life.
Yeah. Amazing. So, can you tell people how they can find you and Learning RX in general if to try to see where they are? Because you
Yeah.
guys are all over, right?
Oh, yes. We're all over the
Yeah.
US as LearningRx. Globally, we're
Okay.
BrainRx. So we have
Hmm.
centers all around the world. LearningRx.com is maybe your first stop for information about our research, program information, or finding a center near you. We do work with clients in person and remotely. So even if you don't have a center near you, we can still help you. For homeschooling families, go to learningrx.com/homeschool for more specifics on how we help homeschooling families. And there's also some free resources for you there. You can find me and Dr. Amy Moore at the Brainy Moms podcast, where we have a parent friendly deep dive into all things cognitive skills, learning challenges, brain training, as well as other parenting topics. And then if you want to see more demonstrations and just encouragement on this topic, you can find me at the Brain Trainer Lady on TikTok. I talk a lot about these particular skills and try to keep them friendly so that we can understand them and apply them anytime we need to take a deeper dive into our kids' learning.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing with us.
I loved it. Thanks for having me.
As we wrap up today's episode, I want to pause and acknowledge how much that we've covered about working memory, follow through into the real rhythms of homeschooling. Understanding capacity, cognitive load, and task initiation can be incredibly freeing, but insight is only the first step. Applying these ideas in the middle of everyday life where, well, life can be complicated, and so this can feel even more complicated. To help you move from understanding into action, I created a companion guide called Working Memory and Follow Through in the Homeschool Day: Practical Tools for Building Executive Functioning. It walks you through how to recognize overload, reduce entry demands, and support independence in practical ways. You can download it in the show notes and begin using it right away. And if you're thinking, this makes sense, but I'm not sure how it fits my child, that's exactly why I offer coaching. Coaching is a conversation and not a checklist. We look at your homeschool day, your child's specific patterns, and the supports that will actually work for your family. Whether you need help with working memory, routines, sensory needs, or follow through, you do not have to figure this out alone. So if you're ready for individualized support, I'd love to work with you. Start with a guide and reach out when you're ready for more. I'm Sarah Collins, occupational therapist and homeschool mom. Thanks for listening and recognizing you are not doing this alone, because the OT is always in.